Alrighty, hi everybody. Welcome to the last open day session of January 2023. It's a very exciting session. We are going to be looking at maps, specifically hydrological maps that have been created by MSc candidates, so master students of Hans van der Kwast's. We're going to be having a look at how their maps have come together, their styling, all the amazing things they've been done, give some constructive feedback, and all in all, just have a really great time. So Hans is going to introduce you to the class, the course, and everything about what's going to happen in this session. Over to you, Hans.
Thanks, Amy. So I'll do it a bit vlog style here. But I'm not going to do all the introduction because we have a volunteer from the class who's going to introduce what they're studying here and what the topic is about and the assignment. They are in the process of finalizing the map. So what you will see is not the final version. So it's the right moment to give constructive feedback on improvements. They will also tell about their challenges. They've been using the book QGIS for hydrological applications, also in other classes. So, but now in this case, they needed to really apply what they've learned. And that's, of course, the tough part because the school book examples always work perfectly. But then you apply it to your own study area and things become more difficult. So we're looking very much forward. So anybody who has questions, remarks, suggestions, we're happy to hear. And I'm going to give the word to our host, and that is Grace. So I'm going to switch the camera here. Yeah, so this is Grace.
Good afternoon all. I am Grace. I am from Sierra Leone. I have a bachelor's degree in geology from the University of Sierra Leone. Presently, I'm pursuing a master's degree in water and sustainable development under the environment profile and water resources and ecosystem health track. My colleagues and I are presently undertaking a module water quality assessment and management. And the objective of this module is to introduce us to monitoring cycle in natural water bodies and also to help us understand tools and methods to apply for designing monitoring network. QGIS was the tool introduced to us, and we were expected tasks to use QGIS to delineate different catchments of our choices around the world. And we had a first session with Professor Hankas, in which he introduced to us the general workflow for deriving streams and river catchments using DM in QGIS. Specifically, we use the SRTM, most of us, and some of us use the open topography, and we were able to come up with different maps that are now displayed. This is the map. This is a catchment from Kenya. And this is another one from Myanmar. And kindly note that this is no expert work. This is a learning process, as most of us are just beginners. But however, the use of the materials that was introduced to us, the QGIS for hydrology, was very useful, and also the inland class was very useful to come up with this work. As you can see, we hope to hear from you, give us feedback and tips on how we can improve on our work, as a lot of us are beginning to pick interest in and learning the usefulness of QGIS in management of water resources overall. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you maybe start with your own map and explain the area and your challenges and your observations and what you're asking for tips maybe?
Okay, this is my map. This is the longest river basin in my country. It is about 8,000 kilometers square in size. However, it is called the Roque River Basin. This basin is there are lots of anthropogenic activities going on in this basin, which is why I chose to develop a water quality monitoring network for this basin. But in application of the GIS, I ended up manipulating, I ended up sorting myself out because I was unable to derive my streams and catchment using the general workflow. What I did was I extracted my shapefile, the catchment boundary, and then I clipped my the river shapefile all from hydro basins. And then in the styling layer, I kind of interpolated and linked and somehow was able to come up with a stream network. So this is how I came up with this map. I did not apply use the DM, but I was able to produce a map.
I think that's also important, that if you are stuck and you need to present it on QGIS Open Day and you want a result, that you also use open data that's available and still present the catchments. I think that's good. So any remarks or tips from the students also here or from the audience?
For me, your cartography looks beautiful. I would have just liked to see like the surrounding areas maybe also shown, like on, I think some of the other maps we're going to look at now have got like the surrounding area, just to give you some context, like on the that it's not like an island, but like it's shown in the context of everything else around it. But otherwise, beautiful.
Yeah, it looks good. I agree wholeheartedly with Tim. I think especially with hydrogeology, it's important to understand the context, or at least the landscape context in which these things are happening. So I definitely have that.
I just have a question.
Go for it, Jeremy.
Yes. What's that inset map in the top right corner? Like, is it the same as the big map, or?
It's the same. It's just part of designing and.
Okay, it's just, so I just wanted, I couldn't fully see that. Okay, yeah, so obviously in the future will that then be like a contextual map for you, like where the valley is in the country, or?
Yeah, also the vlogger here found out the inset map in a very late moment. So what they've learned in class, of course, with the book, how to make the locator map. But I think what wasn't really picked up here is that it doesn't need to have exactly the same detail as the main map, because it needs to show some context on where it is. So there's definitely some improvement needed there. And they've also learned, you will see it in the other maps, the inverted polygon shape burst fill method to highlight your catchment. That was also in this case was not applied. I've seen it with some more of the participants here that they clip already in early stage their DEM. Well, I think it's very nice to not clip and use the inverted polygon shape burst fill to shade a little bit the areas outside, but give the reader the context, which you can see here, of the area in which is located beyond the catchment boundary.
Mm-hmm. And even for the insert map there, it could be quite nice to actually have it contextualized within the country that it's in, even if it's just, like the free layer that comes with QGIS. I can see from the text where the map is located, but it would be nice to be able to see it visually. I know that might be outside of the scope, but that would be pretty cool.
Not really. It was included in the class. We see some examples where that happened. So,
okay, cool.
So a bit more context. So we use of course, the Ruhr catchment, where you see the countries around Netherlands, Germany, Belgium. So that idea is definitely a good advice to show a little bit more of the country is a big country and the catchment is small in the country, or if it's transboundary, to show which countries it crosses.
I really like the color ramp you've used. It's very informative to highland and lowland areas. I think that's very, very cool.
Yeah, and there is the blending with the hill shade that they also learn. And if you look at the details, you also see the interpolated line renderer for the different strahler orders in the river.
Oh, Cool. So the rivers are getting wider and wider as they go.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good.
I'll just have one comment on the
Admire, we lost you for a second.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I have one comment on the label on the map. What do you call the text at the back at the bottom of the map? The north arrow, the map credits. Maybe just to align them in a single straight line, and then that would make it much more visible.
Yeah, good advice. I think use of space in general can be improved. Less white, better use of the paper. Yeah, and alignment of elements. Okay. I suggest we go to the next map. Well, Grace, you are moderating, so who would you choose? Introduce yourself, where you're from, what your case is about, and then explain your map.
My name is Alex. I'm from the US. This is the upper Chester River on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay. So here's the catchment boundary as it was delineated by the process we learned using the flow direction and the DEM. The DEM comes from open topography. The network, the general shape of the river network is similar to as it exists in real life. The catchment boundary is quite different from reality, however. After playing around with it, this was the closest match that I could come up with. However, there's a lot of the actual catchment that extends this way as well as to the northeast that didn't get included. So the problem that I ran into mainly was that the river gets quite a bit wider in certain points down here, and that was causing some disruptions with the process. And so as I was choosing an outlet point for the catchment, I was starting where I wanted it to be, which was over here. And as I was seeing the different results, I was moving it farther and farther back until I got to a point where it gave me something that resembled somewhat the actual catchment.
Thanks. So just some expert comment on the delineation and why this touches a limitation of the process. It's maybe for people who are watching interesting to know. So these algorithms that they learn are mostly applicable to catchments which are in mountainous areas with hills. So if it flattens out and it goes towards the estuary or a delta, also the rivers will become very wide and DMs don't pick it up. And the processes that are simulated in the delineation needs gravity. So the more further downstream you go and you end up in the estuary where the river is quite wide, which is happening down here, the more problematic your delineation gets. Okay.
Yeah, the lack of elevation in this catchment was definitely a challenge to work with.
Any comments from the audience or from students here?
One comment from me would be maybe it would be nice to have shifted it just right on the map a bit more, so because it seems like the things on the right of the map are not so interesting and the things on the left are more interesting. And just like, because I'm wondering what happens like off the frame on the left of the map, or is there a coastline, or?
That's a good point. Yeah, to the left of the frame, what's happening is that it's draining into the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah. Good point.
I think some of the comments that referred to the previous one definitely apply to this one. It would be really nice to see an insert map to give us greater context. Some of the elements at the bottom of the map could use slightly better spacing. You know, it's sort of very much your color ramp, etc. on one side, and then suddenly on the other side, the legend. So it could be nice if those were, you know, slightly larger and just flowed better, were, you know, spaced correctly, etc.
Thanks. Any other comments?
I mean, I love what you're making. So also, one always feels bad making comments because you feel like you detract from the good things you've done. I just wondered, like, how long did it take you, and like what's the effort levels?
That's a really good question, Tim. Can you explain?
I wasn't counting the hours necessarily, but it's been a few days of learning this process, what the workflow is, why the importance of each step, and there was an exercise that we spent quite a lot of time on just to kind of get used to it, and then we applied it to our own cases. It was a while. It was a solid week's work.
Yeah. So in IHE, they don't get a whole semester on GIS. So you will be shocked when you hear how little time these people get for making these maps.
All the more impressive.
No, it's fantastic.
So I guess it's officially around 16 hours to do this plus some other things in a week where they also have to work on other assignments.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of night work that we don't count for. Okay, who's next?
I think Romario has quite an interesting.
Okay, let's have a look.
All right, so I'm Romario. I'm from Guyana. This is a transboundary basin that I would have selected for my case study. Well, the first, I would say, a weakness is that I didn't really show the different countries, but hopefully I can improve on that before I can submit it. But to my right, it would be I should say that the river is divided into two. So the right part of the basin is in Guyana, and the left side of the basin is in the Venezuelan mainland. It's called the Wenamu River Basin. And one of the things that I also found interesting is because I couldn't find a data set in English for my streams. So for us, it is Wenamu, but given using OpenStreetMap, this is the name I got, Venamu, which I am certain is in Spanish, Rio Venamu, but I didn't know how to alter it, so I stuck with it. The other problem I was having is the disconnected streams that I encountered. So I did like about 3 trials in like three nights. I couldn't find my way through, so I opted to use the Basin Futures data set to generate my stream network, which I think worked out pretty fine compared to my initial attempts. So yeah, that was my main challenge. I included some of the communities on my stream because one of the objective of this map is to show how the different land used and geology and so forth can affect water quality, or to determine our monitoring network. So that is really the intent of the case study. The outlet is it intersects with another stream where you have an island. So that's my river outlet. And the other problem, because of the disconnected points, when I was trying to define the outlet, I couldn't generate the catchment as you see here. It was giving me a different shape, which of course was not accurate. So that was another problem. But yeah, my final work is this.
So maybe a first question for me, how do you know what result is accurate? Because you compare it apparently with something you know or what you download?
Yeah, I compared with the previous assignment that I did. So I knew the basin is supposed to look like this. But when I compared it with the using the process that we had for the class, there were 2 different catchment boundaries. I think it was a bit smaller and more like towards the left, a larger portion into Venezuela, but that couldn't be because I knew that the stream begins somewhere in the highlands here. Yeah.
Oh yes, but you need to come closer. One of the lecturers is the module coordinator, in fact, Constantina. She also wants to say something.
Hi. and I'm also the co-coordinator of Module 3. So I want to clarify, because I'm not sure if Romario explained that enough. So we use there the basin futures, and in fact, the databases used are all the global databases. And they had an assignment, and in fact, when we have been designing these modules, the plan was that they start with something easy. They collect all the data, the hydrological data, without having any previous knowledge of any area. And they work on their basins. And in fact, they collect also what kind of water quality data are present for the catchment, where you pretty much realize that there's nothing or limited data. And then they enter this module where they can draw their own maps, set up their own monitoring network. So they follow, in fact, the thread, the common thread.
I think that's a good context indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Konstantina. So are there questions from the audience on the design?
I wanted to say that I really like the way that it pops out the catchment, sort of you made it pop out of the rest of the map, and it almost looks 3D on the screen sometimes, like, you know, like
That's a good feedback.
it really got a really nice
the blending with the hillshades really nice on these plateaus here.
Looks beautiful.
It is. It looks really, really good. I wanted to mention, I really like that you've put your elevation ramp on the map. I find that for my eye, it immediately kind of knows what's going on rather than off of the actual map canvas. You know, it kind of ties it together. However, some of your map elements are spaced. There should be like a more bounding space around them. So if you go to the north arrow, you can see it's right up against the boundary of the map. It should really be in the middle of that corner area with like 5 mil on top, 5 mil on the edge. In fact, I probably wouldn't even put it there. I would put it at the bottom above the scale bar, both of which I would put inside the map canvas, and make your map canvas bigger. The map is the most beautiful visual part of it. And you've got quite a lot of white space at the bottom of that page. So I would make the map slightly larger, just to show off how cool it is, etc. And then pull the elements into the map in a nice sort of spaced, boxed area.
I think especially if you're mapping catchments, you're always going to have some like empty or like not so relevant parts around the edge of the catchment where you can put these other elements into. But we don't know. Maybe Hans gave him a directive to save toner ink on the printer, and he told them not to make it properly. I was going to add one other small suggestion. If you zoom into the legend there, and I put in the chat of the Jitsi chat a page that I've been working with our interns. You see how you underscore separated the word island and Ankoko.
Did I mention that?
Yeah, he mentioned it.
Sorry, Tim. I, of course, mentioned this as one of the big annoyances.
Okay.
And maybe also putting the word legend above the legend. I think I also mentioned that.
So if you look in the link that I shared in the Jitsi, which you're welcome to share with your thing, I have like this list of mantras, and maybe Hans can add to the list. But one of them is like, the user should not be exposed to the inner workings of the system. So this for me breaks this mantra, which is like somewhere internally somebody decided they had to put underscores because the computer needed it like this. But humans don't really care about underscore or understand underscores. So it's good to like make it more human facing when it comes out to the map at the end. But other than that, it's a really beautiful job there.
Great, well done. Grace, who do we choose next?
Yeah, thank you to Mario. Queen has some already prepared challenges.
So introduce yourself, your country.
I'm Win from Myanmar, Southeast Asian country. I'm studying here for the water quality assessment and management, and we have to use some GIS to delineate our catchment or our monitoring networks. So this is my work here, and actually. We're supposed to delineate it. Yes, of course, I delineated. But what I have is like, can I show this one? What I have is like, it's a screenshot that I have found in my delineating process. You can see when I get to the stralas, and this is the OSM map in layer in under this one. This is a strala that I calculated in flow direction. So what I found is like if the river that I want to do is like disconnected here and also disconnected here. So I can't really move on from this point. So because the river is not connected in my strala. So even though I try a lot of strala layers, but like 7 or smaller numbers, but it doesn't connect it anymore. So I tried with some exercises that I have learned from the previous chapters in the GIS hydrology book, and I used some open data results, hydroshats, and also I use strala orders, and you can see it clearly like in my catchment strala orders, and there's tributaries here. This is an Uru River, and it flows into this is an outflow, and it flows into the Chindrin River here, and you can see it. But and now, as I'm explaining, I think it's for me to better include the rivers here, like the main river, how it's flow and how it's go out of the catchment and how it's outflow into the Chindrin River. And I think I need to improve it. And that's the point that I found out recently. And yes, this is the map work that I have done so far.
Thank you, Win. I was pointing to the wrong map in the beginning. Sorry.
This is my work.
Yeah. Just some remarks on the technical challenge that Win has encountered, what she wanted to show also with the screenshot here. These methods, again, work very well in natural environments. And what we can also see clearly from the OpenStreetMap, also not here because it's not in color, but where she has the arrows, it's we've inspected it and we saw that there has been a lot of landscaping. There's mines. So then, of course, if humans start modifying the landscape, then the algorithms have more difficulty to connect the rivers because it will look for natural flows. So that's exactly what happened. And we should also note the size compared to the other ones. So it's quite a large area that she covered, which we can also see on the inset. So I'm curious about the remarks from the audience.
Any remarks from in the room?
Could you please zoom in to the bottom of the...
Yes, which part? Left, right?
Yes, I figured maybe because there's this huge white space in between that could be utilized better.
You mean between the scale
Yes.
bar and the, yeah.
And also sort of a line like the Straha stream orders, and then the rest of the legend, like you could just, because it's a title, you can bring down the town and city to sort of a bit like you're trying to match them into a format, like in a single, how do you say it? A single line?
Yeah, to align it better and to make it like a group.
Yeah.
I have a question about your choice of color for your color ramp. I like all of it except the top color of black, just because immediately when I look at a map and I see black, I think of a low place, a dark sort of the whole place, whereas it's your highest elevation on the map. So why did you decide to go with a black instead of a white, you know, or just like carry on sort of with the darker orange color?
Actually, to be honest, I just refer to the exercise of the RAM color that I have do in the rod catchment. We have an exercise on the rod catchment, and here we are applying it on our own catchment. So I think it's also, I noted down before when someone give a comment to the other students' color range, and then I noticed that I need to change my color range to be more like pop up the catchment.
The mountains in this case. So
It's a bit
I'm going to help you a little bit. It has to do, which I think maybe we should pay a bit more attention to, is the stretching of the color. So the problem is not the ramp that you choose. We can see from the legend that the ramp is like many others here use, but it's stretched between a minimum of -207, which is very deep. So that's also the question if that's realistic. So many of the colors here will, the green colors are not used because they're far below sea level. And then it's kept at 697 meters, while these ones might be much higher. So you're not stretching the color range over the real minimum maximum inside the catchment.
Not well distributed.
No, and you can easily correct that in QGIS. So if you need help, you just let me know.
Yeah.
I do like how large the map is on the page. You've really maximized the amount of visual information, and that's really cool.
Yes.
Also, like apart from it being large, I think I have a bit of a problem with the the boundaries of both the insert map and the main map touching the border. So maybe I'd say like just try and make sure that the boundaries of your actual map don't touch the borderline, so that it's much more neat. Even on the map, I think even this map, it had like a similar thing where the boundaries of the main map were touching the border. So try and actually just zoom out a tiny bit so that at least there's like breathing space for your main map, and you don't have to cut off like information that would be like necessary.
That's a good advice. So you can also shift this a bit. There's enough space here. And what you can also see here in the detail is that there's a gap that should always be avoided. So it goes beyond the map extent of the DEM behind. So you need to tune a little bit to avoid that. Okay, any more remarks? Okay, then we go to the next. Grace, who do you choose?
Siva.
Hello.
Hello.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Siva Jene from Zambia. I'm looking at the Kafue catchment, which is the second largest catchment in Zambia after the Zambezi River. It's about 156,000 square kilometers. Yeah. To start with, I really had challenges with the elevation, the color. I think it wasn't stretched much, as said from the previous presenter. So I wondered why it was actually brown or black. But it's good that I've been told what to do, and I'll correct that. The other thing I can say is the background color. I really wanted to put something, not to leave it white, but I didn't know what to go for. Oh. Yes. Then the other challenge I faced was when putting the legend on my river channels. There was something here, but it couldn't reflect. So I think I need to learn on how to do that.
You could use a patch.
Yeah, or even without that, have a legend anyway, straightforward. But I think you can also learn a lot from each other and looking back in the instructions for that. But there's some other details that you don't mention, which others might want to comment on.
Okay, so for the river channels, I got them from Basin Future because I found challenges in QGIS my channels were not connecting. So I had to change the last minute thing. I think the last minute hope was just to use the Basin Future. And the boundary is from OpenStreetMap.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
Just a small detail thing that I also look with our interns normally point out. Do you see your heading? You put Kafue catchment and channels, and you've capitalized the first letter of the word Kafue and catchment, but then not of channels. And I usually try to like establish some rules for myself, like if I'm going to capitalize all the first letters of all the all the nouns or whatever, then I try to do it all or none, but not like have a mix of things, because you create a sense of visual consistency like in your map. And Another thing that I usually try to emphasize, like if you have dark things on a dark background or light things on a light background, it makes it, especially for old guys with bad eyes like me, quite hard to see like the rivers between all the dark background. It's hard to make them out. I really have to squint and concentrate hard. And you want to be like, make it as easy for your viewer to consume the information you're showing them as possible. So maybe some cartographic choices like, well, I think you have the same scaling issues that we talked about before in the previous person's one, but if it is really all in this like dark end of the color space, then maybe use a lighter river color so that it pops out on the map more.
Yeah. You could use still a light blue that people imagine that it's a river, but the dark blue indeed goes here blends into the background. Good point. Any other comments from the audience?
I think I've got one comment, which is the attribution of the layers. You mentioned that you used layers from OSM and various sources. So in your map credits there, it would be quite nice to just give an attribution to say these layers were sourced from A, B, C, D, so that users can be able to, your map can be able to communicate all this information without you being in presence to explain all these different concepts that are available on your map.
I think she does have there at Maya. She was just pointing to on the
here. The only thing what I noticed also with the others that used data that we didn't use in the book, that they only credit the data used from the book. So I would say, because I don't even remember that data set that they use in class, I'm very curious to learn more about that. So what's that again?
Base in future?
Base in future, yeah. It should be here so I can look it up and I don't need to use my memory to say, which data set did you mention?
Yeah. And do they mention the coordinate reference system as well for the map itself?
No, because I teach them if you don't present the coordinate grid, which is I think also overrated in these kind of maps, but it's all data, then you don't need to put all that extra information that is not very useful. So I prefer to have a locator map that you know where it is, and I generally say only use coordinate grid with the projection that you use for the grid if you want to use the map in the field.
I think Maya was asking about whether the coordinate reference system is mentioned at the bottom.
No, but it's also not needed. I think, but maybe standards are different.
I agree that, like, well, I tell our interns, like, here are a bunch of rules and then break them with intention. So, like, if you think you don't need it, then don't use it, but at least know what's like a normal thing to do, and then you make a conscious decision when you exclude it or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I do a bit the same with the North Arrow discussion. So we as cartographers have a lot of discussions about these things. But here in class, we have a bit of the rule that if you have a locator map, then we don't use a coordinate grid because then there's not much added value. But we always put a North Arrow, but knowing that it might be not always needed. But it doesn't have to be as big as this one. Okay, thank you. I think we move to the next one. Sorry.
You want to come and tell us about your interest?
You just finished it and are putting it up now? Fresh from the press?
This is my final product.
Oh, okay. I'm curious about your story, but first introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Joe from Myanmar. And my background is medical doctor. I'm here for the water and sustainable development because of my interest in environmental study. So I have very little training for the QGIS, especially I missed the introduction weeks because I'm from the water health track, not from the ecosystem health track. So, but I follow the tutorial videos, and it's really worked well on tutorial videos, except the PC raster flagging installation. But when I really delineate my catchments, there's a lot of problems. Similar to most of my colleagues, my rivers are disconnected. So when I go down the Strahler order up to 5, even that time until that orders, it is they are still disconnected, and there's a lot of rivers and streams on the map. But my interest, the monitoring project is is the lake, which I didn't know about previously. It will be very difficult for me for the QGIS mapping. So anyhow, I tried at the outlet around here. So I got the lake, and because it is on the lake, the flow lines are crossing the lake, and they appear somehow in the QGIS before putting the map on the canvas. But when I put on the canvas, those flow lines are also disappeared. And I tried to style it and fix it, but it didn't help. So I think it is insensible to use the hydrological map without any flow lines. So like the others, I use the open data from the hydrosheds, both for the catchment map and also for the rivers and streams.
So just a few comments on the technical constraints that were mentioned. Also here,
also
sorry, yeah.
For the labelings, I choose the cities and towns, but the problem is there's also not many developers in my country, I guess, and for some, the names are in Chinese, even though we are not in China. So this is I got from Wikipedia. This for the whole small towns, I got only one name. That's also one of my problems. And also on the locator map, I cannot get the name properly here.
But if we can read those small ones, we have all the names.
Yeah, these from the open street map, the background map.
I doubt, because then you would have them also in your downloaded from Quick OSM. So something goes wrong there.
Yeah, on the labeling, I choose a different set. But yeah,
okay.
This is the first I can try for at the moment. Yeah. So.
Okay. I would just like to comment on technical limitations again, because people always expect miracles from just applying a few algorithms. It's very difficult if you have a lake.
Yeah.
And you need to process it really, because it will simply the fill sinks algorithm will fill up the lake, and to make sure that the water crosses the lake, so it will make a small slope and make sure that all the streams go straight downward. But this causes a lot of problems. So I always introduce this assignment with some constraints. So not to choose a too large area, not flat, not in a delta, and choose your outlets at the shores of the lakes and not including the lake itself. So rather delineate a sub-catchment than get a whole basin with lots of lakes and avoid complications.
Yeah, I follow the instructions of Hans to choose the different outlets. Some map I try more than 10 outlets, but the problem is my focus is on for the lake. Some part of the lake are missing, so I'm also apply to use those maps because it will be matched up with my monitoring network. So I think this is the best for.
Yeah, sure. This looks really nice. So I think we can go to the comments on this this map. Anyone?
Any comments in our room? I
just check your
go for it, Tim. Oh, I think we lost you. You're muted. I just wanted to say, yeah, I think you muted.
Go on. No, you carry on.
I was just going to say that some of the elements of the map kind of seem randomly distributed at the bottom, because the scale is so far to the one side and then your legend is so far to the other side. I actually don't associate them with the actual image of the map, the canvas, because they're sort of not aligned underneath it. They're not in a row. They kind of appear randomly plonked there. So definitely pull your map decorations and your map elements together so that they tell the full story of what's happening, and when you look at the map, it is immediately evident that these things relate to the map that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Also, having information that is inaccurate is a great time to go and contribute to OSM. I'm always going to harp on about that, but yeah, if you know the area really well and there's an issue with an OSM label, hop onto the OSM site and contribute correction. It's that, I mean, OSM is also a community, so it's important for people to go and update that information.
You help yourself and others to add the important places of this catchment in OpenStreetMap. Thank you. Okay, because of time, I think we move to the next one because we are running a little bit out. How many more? We have 3 more, I think. Hello.
Hi, my name is Felicia Prasad. I'm from Guyana. I'm going to keep it very brief. I had a lot of difficulties delineating my map. So what I did to actually get my particular catchment, so I made a few attempts following the steps that were given. So when it came to my DM, I was having issues. When it came to my straw order, I was having issues as well. So, but when I also checked, my projection was incorrect. Due to time, I end up using Basin Future to just get my catchment. I apply certain principles or principles or rules from Mr. Hunt to actually have this output that you see here right now. So we have a few communities around the map that is shown here. It is flat, it's forested, so there's not much variation in terms of the layout. If you see here as well, and a few things missing with respect to the labeling, the north arrow, and those sort of things. So this is an unfinished map, but this is what I have so far.
Thank you. And the area is quite flat, right? Yeah. So that's also giving challenges, flat areas. I always say don't do it for the Netherlands because the rivers here are above the landscape. So no gravity, we pump it up. So always the methods should be appropriate for the study area in GIS also.
One thing that might have been nice as the group of you collaborating together would be to like standardize the color ramp, because I think the black is the lowest. Is it? Am I reading it correctly? Is the black the lowest area?
No, it's the highest.
No, but it's
but some have high on top and some at the bottom, and there were some questions about it in the past because in the Ruhr, we align the scale, so the low and the high end with the gradient in the catchment, which is also from south to north, from high to low. So yeah, but there can be even a lot of discussion if you need to do it, because there can also be a standard of having high always on the top of this ladder. But in this case,
when I was reading, like having seen the other maps, I thought that, well, I got a bit confused because it was flipped around.
Yeah. Good point.
I do think sometimes these things also need to be logical. You know, if you're a viewer and you're looking at a map, generally in lower lying areas there is more water, etc., and it would be more green. As you go up a mountain, it's going to go less and less green to more brown to then white to snow. So when I'm looking at elevation, because maps are a representation of the real world, that's a little bit of what I'm expecting to see. So you don't necessarily have to use it like that, but just for usability and like user experience, think about the color gradients like that.
Exactly. And in the tropics, don't go to white unless you're sure there's a glacier, I would say.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we don't do white in Africa where we're from.
Okay.
Maybe on Kili.
Yes, exactly. Let's go to the next one. Grace, who do you choose? Not much choice left. Let me see if my battery power is still okay. 10%. We'll make it.
Yes. My name is Kennedy Odhiambo. I come from Kenya. I was working on the Naton catchment, which is shown here. It's an catchment of around 5,600 kilometers square. It rises from the highest mountains in the Mau escarpment and flows through the borders of Kenya, Tanzania, getting draining into Lake Natron, that is within the border of Kenya and Tanzania. The catchment passes through an area which is quite dry, very high precipitation, very high evaporation, and very low precipitation rates, and that there are a lot of, the catchment is not really very well sustainable in terms of retaining water because of the lot of seepages, and so this basically the catchment I was working on. I had a number of difficulties working with coming up with the map because of the challenges of I couldn't use the DEM, so I had to revert to.
So you continue. We're trying to fix some battery power here.
Okay, I had to revert to using the open topological map, and finally I was able to come up with something about this catchment.
So we're fixing the power.
We are running out of battery. Okay, now it's doing.
No problem.
Oh, no. Ah.
Well, we have 9%. That's our limit.
We've lost video for you, just to let you know. So
okay, it should be.
Okay, it's back.
It should be back. Okay, let's have a look and listen to your comments. Or do you want to?
I can make a comment. Is that when you're composing the map, just try to think about symmetry and like placing things like in a grid or in a standard way. So, for example, your inset seems to be over the catchment that you're talking about, so we lose some information behind the inset map, and the thing in the bottom left-hand corner is like make me feel like it slid across to the left. It wants to be like lined up to the border, and just look for symmetry. It's like just a nice thing to do, that your eye feels much more at home if everything is like lined up with each other. Yeah.
Anything else?
It would have. It's a pity the DEM couldn't come through as well, because I suspect it was really interesting terrain going on in the background there, but we don't really understand the terrain from the map so well. Or is the DEM there? It's really not so easy to see.
No, and it looks like it's some squares on top of each other, and I think there's a little bit of confusion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Take a lot to polish on this one still.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I suggest we go to the last one.
8% battery.
Yeah, the batteries will be the limit. 7%. We'll make it.
Now that we
okay, we try again to fuel up.
Because it works in my mobile phone. So, do you allow anything else to be connected to you?
Yeah. Don't know why it's.
Let me switch. Yeah. It works with mine. I just checked it.
Okay. Let's just continue. It's okay.
Okay.
We can do a few more minutes. Yes, Sefer, it's your turn.
Hello, good evening. My name is Sefer. I'm from Iran. Unfortunately, I couldn't finalize my map because it was in a really super flat area. It was in, actually the catchment was Everglades in Florida, in Miami City. And the average elevation in this catchment was between -5 to 20. So it was impossible to use the tiles and mosaic tiles. So I just tried to figure out the area of the catchment, that's all. So I couldn't prepare it here. I'm sorry for that, but yeah, that was the most difficult part of the catchment, the modeling.
Yeah, it sounds like Netherlands, -5 to 20. Like we would put on our mountain shoes to get up that 20 meters.
Actually, I think that those 20 meters are something buildings, not anything else.
Hans,
okay.
Yes. In a situation like this, are you allowed to cheat and go and like create like a stretched version of the terrain, like multiply it by?
It will. Yeah, it will not help with the algorithms because the slopes are normally so low that it needs really a lot of.
Actually, I tried to use the open topography, but when I checked it out, it was all green. I mean,
it's the same. Yeah.
I had no elevation in it.
So using Hans.
I'm going to switch to the classroom view because my phone will run out. So we'll catch up on the other screen. One moment. Switch off this one so we can just continue and finalize.
So you should hear us now on the classroom.
Awesome.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Amy?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you all hear us?
Yes, we can hear you, but I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So we've seen all the presenters and we collected some really useful feedback from the panel here. And I think we've learned a lot how to make good maps. Making good maps is not an easy job and it needs time, but there's also here the balance between time, the skills that you are learning, and then presenting the results, preliminary results already, with all kinds of constraints in the methods also. So I think that's useful to realize.
Yeah, congratulations to everybody. It's amazing what you've achieved in a very short space of time. And I've been following through Hans's book. I know the things you're doing are not easy, so I kind of doubly impressed to see what you've achieved.
You should definitely all watch Tim's speed try of the book.
Oh, don't know.
Basically looking at the book and doing all the steps. It's learning it the hard way, but I think it's a good way to see that it is really a difficult task. So again, congratulations that you achieved this. And I also suggest for this session, if you couldn't make it with the catchment delineation procedures, that you indeed use other data sources, so we could at least see your catchment.
I think you guys did absolutely amazingly. And I know a lot of the time in GIS, you're kind of really concentrating on the analysis that has to happen. But at the end of the day, when you make a map, it's still got to be a user-friendly, viable product. So really think when you're making a map, who the viewer is, how they're going to see this map. And remember that all maps are a representation of real life. So it's important to think of that when you're choosing color amps. It's really important to lay your elements of your map out. There's no correct way to do it. That's the thing. But if you lay everything out in a really nice layout with a good buffer around each element, if you have context around your map, that's also really important. So a background DEM as well as an insert map, all of those things just make it much more easily readable by the viewer. At the end of the day, someone's got to view this and get information from it, and you want that to be as easy as possible.
And if you put it in another way, like the proportion of time you spent on doing the analysis, you put in all this hard work, but if at the last thing when you actually show somebody the result, they can't immediately see all the work you've done because they're getting confused or distracted by things on the map, then you like reduce the impact of all that great work you've done. So like the map is really critical to actually turn all that hard thinking and computer time that you've done into something that actually becomes useful out in the real world. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room have a comment for the students for finalizing their maps?
Thank you so much for your feedbacks and comments. We do appreciate it. And I believe all of us do going home with various lessons to improve on our map, which is really critical for our assignment. And so we really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and we hope to collaborate in the future, in the near future.
All right, brilliant stuff. Thanks, Hans. Shall I end our stream there?
Thank you.
Ciao.
Brilliant stuff. All right, stream ended. Thanks, everyone.
Hans.